Sorry about that. I think we got the audio going now, so that's good. We're just waiting a minute or two, and everybody should be logged on there. I think everybody's getting logged on now, so welcome to our first Sunday chat. I did this very impromptu. As I said, this is like our fourth live stream, I think. So for us, it's just a matter of being able to learn and grow and make this a smooth experience when we start doing this in the new year. And our first live vlog, let me look at the calendar here and see what it says. I think what we'll do is we will aim to do it every Sunday at 1:30 starting January 9th. So January 9th at 1:30, we'll be starting the live vlogs on a regular basis, or live streams. And what I like about that is once the baseball season starts, when it does start, because it's going to be late this year, hopefully there'll be a Sunday game on when we do the live stream, so we can talk about the game, we can catch up on the week, ask any questions, and really just get together as a community. Secondly, you hear some music in the background, probably faded in the background. I apologize for that. That's just my other half, and she's not making an appearance this time, so nothing to worry about there. First one, I just want to say right off the hop, Phil Niekro died. Somebody who's been with the Jays, an amazing player, obviously, with the Atlanta Braves. I think he's fourth all-time on innings pitched, like up there with Cy Young. That's how good this guy was. Just very durable and consistent. So condolences to his family. Definitely a legend who passed away today. Kind of stinks to start off the Sunday vlog or Sunday live stream with that, but I just wanted to acknowledge that right off the hop. Okay, and we have a question. DJ LeMahieu to the Mets. What's going on with those rumors? That's a good one, actually. If we talk about that, we have to talk about Didi Gregorius. And I'm going to get into that vlog in a second as well. Because I think DJ LeMahieu is really holding out for that $100 million. Is DJ LeMahieu going to get paid $100 million? No. Sorry, DJ. I don't even think there's going to be maybe 3 players who eclipses $100 million this offseason. Obviously, Trevor Bauer, whether it's a $30 million for 1 year with opt-out clauses, it's going to be over $100 million, however you cut it all together. JT Realmuto as well, and George Springer. Those are your 3 players who are going to get over $100 million. That's just because of this weird COVID-type season. Everybody's making less. I said in any other season, JT Realmuto would be signing a contract between $150 to $200 million. But because of this, he's only going to get between 100 to 125. And we'll talk about this COVID market in a second. So, DJ LeMahieu to the Mets. I don't know if there's a lot of truth to that. There could be. But Steve Cohen, I don't know if he's going to be one of those type of GMs who just talks a lot. But hey, that's great. A GM who connects and is very social savvy with his fans is something that I certainly like. Something that I liked about AA. I'm not saying about his general GM abilities. Maybe we'll make that topic number 3. But I definitely like Steve Cohen, and him bringing Jared Porter on board was the right step. Whether they bring DJ LeMahieu on board, I don't see it happening. I think that's kind of just a poke at the Yankees to say, hey, let's get this going. There are definitely other teams that could be interested on me. I think the Yankees have offered between $70 to $80 million, and I predicted DJ to get that $72 million, so it's a little bit maybe higher than even I thought right off the hop. And if they're going to get the deal done, I think it might be actually $90 million. I'm surprised by that, but I guess that's how valuable DJ LeMahieu is to the Yankees organization. So that's how I see that progressing. And once DJ sort of signs, you'll see these other dominoes fall. I think you'll see JT actually sign before George Springer. I think JT will just realize that the market's just narrowed and it's the Blue Jays or bust. And he's just going to have to, I don't want to say swallow that pill. Going to the Jays, it sounds horrible. They're actually a really exciting team. But maybe it's not the offseason that he had hoped for. And that goes into this COVID offseason. And that's why I think the Jays have to be extremely, extremely aggressive this offseason. Why? Because there's not too many opportunities where you're going to get players who actually you can get at a minimal amount. What I mean by that is JT Realmuto would have signed for $150 to $200 million. And the Blue Jays being Canadian, it's just the way it is. We have to lump it. There's always sometimes a premium that has to be paid to get players here north of the border. So if we're always a little bit overpaying, this is a season to certainly overpay, because an overpay this season is actually an underpay in a lot of ways. So that's why the Jays just have to be aggressive. I don't think this opportunity is going to come up again, especially with there not being a salary cap in baseball. What do you guys think of a salary cap in baseball? But anyways, that's why the Jays have to strike it hot. Yu Darvish, I'm getting a couple questions about that. And yeah, Yu Darvish, I think, is a really interesting candidate. And it's funny, I did that vlog 2 weeks ago and people screamed at me, no, the Cubbies aren't selling. I think the Cubbies are just being a little bullish about if and when they're going to sell. They have new management coming in. And they're one of those teams that I think, like the Jays in their late years, and talk about the Jays when they should have, traded away Josh Donaldson. They still have some key players on their team that could get them maybe into the postseason, but not deep into the postseason. And then you couple that with the Blue Jays, couple that with the Cubbies having these financial restrictions, or at least cutbacks that they've hemmed and hawed about, definitely leads me to think the rebuild mode. And that gets interesting with Yu Darvish, because he has that huge no trade clause. Pardon me, a little tongue-tied today. So with that no trade clause, he's going to wait and see if the Cubs are serious about doing a rebuild. So the first big chip that I see being traded is Wilson Contreras. And why Wilson? Well, he has the most cost-effective contract on their roster. Then maybe you see something like a surprise like Anthony Rizzo go. And then all of a sudden you are left with Yu Darvish and Chris Bryant in his albatross of a contract. We'll leave Hayward out of it. That's definitely not going to get moved. And that's when Yu Darvish goes, okay, do I want to be comfortable in Chicago and just stay on a team where I'm an ace, get paid my money, retire there? Or do I really want to play for a competitive team in baseball and really, finish off my years really strong going into the postseason, maybe trying to get himself another ring? And that's what leads me to seeing him possibly with the Blue Jays. That's why the Padres are sniffing around there, because he knows if the Padres do make an offer that Yu Darvish would be accepted of that. That's another team that's certainly even stronger than the Jays and a World Series contender for next year. And that's why I think Yu Darvish is going to get traded. Secondly to that, some people said 62, but I think it's actually $59 million. 22, 18, and 17 million owed for the next 3 years respectively on Yu Darvish. And if he puts up those numbers, which was 2.05 ERA last year, finished, I think, second in Cy Young voting. Ruiz was third, I believe. Something like that. I could be wrong on the Cy Young, but he was definitely up there. Makes him really cost-effective in a lot of ways if you want a $20 million pitcher on your team. But that goes back to what teams can actually afford a $20 million pitcher this year. And it's kind of absurd to think that, because in most years that would be a no-brainer. But that limits yourself to the Jays, the Padres, maybe the Mets do something wild, the Dodgers, the Angels, those sort of big-name clubs that have the money to spend. Do I think there should be a salary cap in baseball? I actually do. Now, I don't get into the idiosyncrasies of whether or not and how revenue should be shared. Another thing that I'm a big fan of is revenue sharing. So when you have a team like the Yankees who are going way, way over the tax limit, I think they should pay out to teams like Baltimore or Tampa Bay that are really suffering and trying to compete on a $70 million budget. So that's the first thing that I'm big on. But with a salary cap, I think it allows teams to be competitive. Teams like the Blue Jays, I know they're a little bit bigger. And actually the Jays' payroll has been really huge over the last few years. And we'll get into that in a second. But you have teams like Tampa Bay, maybe teams like Oakland Athletics. You're not going to be able to worry about them having to relocate, even though Tampa Bay relocating might mean a Montreal team. But it really helps those small market teams survive and, more importantly, be competitive. So what MLB needs to do as an organization is find out a way maybe to do revenue sharing with the players. But maybe up it for their retirement somehow, allow it so that all players, not just the big players, get a bigger share of that revenue, but maybe get a post-MLB career so they can retire comfortably. And there's not too many issues, because there are issues out there with post-baseball players who just aren't surviving, not making as much. And I know maybe they make over $100,000 a year on their pension. So, if you can't survive on $100,000 a year, we won't get into that. But this will at least balloon that to a certain sense and maybe find out a way to do revenue sharing with the players that allows it to be equal, but also allows that revenue cap to be in place. That's something that I like. And what would be a good salary cap number? That's a good question. And how would you exceed that? I think you could actually have warning plate tracks in place. And what I could say is, okay, say the salary cap is $240 million, which is absurd, but that's probably as high as it would go, something around that number. So between $180 to $200 million, they pay like 25%. Between 200 to 220, they pay 50. 220 to 240, they pay 75 or 100% on top of that, and then it's capped out at 240. So that's the way I like that, and that's something that I could see definitely being in place. And something that, if that doesn't happen, I think what you're going to see is MLB lean on the players then to really open up that postseason to 16 teams. I actually think this is going to stick. If it doesn't happen this season, it's going to happen in the next few with the next collective bargaining agreement. And I have no problem with opening up to 16 teams, especially if they ever open it up to 32 teams in total. There's talk about 2 expansion teams someday coming, maybe one in Las Vegas and one in Montreal. So 16 out of 32 is 50%, and really stagger it that way and make the offseason a little bit more exciting. And I agree, this offseason is very painful. You know, it's slow. Usually, and this one is exceptionally slow because of this COVID market. And I'll explain that on 2 folds. Yeah, and the reason why I think the MLB offseason is exceptionally slow comes down to money and no salary cap. I've always said people like George Springer, JT Realmuto, DJ LeMahieu, Trevor Bauer, not that they have loyalty. I'm sure they'd be comfortable in a certain hometown or a certain geographical area. But at the end of the day, with these players, it's just going to come down to money. That's it. So they waited out till that high contracts on the table. And we've seen that consistently over the last few years with a lot of the big name tickets that have been out there, and they signed very late into the season. So to me, that's just how it is. And then you get players like relievers, who I think are the most underappreciated group of pitchers out there, because relievers are considered this sort of aftermarket thing. So we'll go out, we'll sign our starting pitchers, we'll go out, we'll sign our offense, and then, we got to get some relievers in there. And that always frustrates me, because I believe a team that's really successful in baseball and the postseason really relies on their bullpen. Remember the Royals, when they knocked out the Blue Jays in the playoffs? That had a lot to do with that bullpen of the Royals that year. Just exceptional. So we'll have to wait and see. Let me just see there. I agree. You know, and it comes down to 162 games. And I think that's actually something that somebody asked me a few vlogs ago is, do you ever see the Blue Jays, baseball season shortening? And I think that's actually something that's going to come out of this COVID. I don't think it's going to be something as drastic as 100 games, but I could see it going down to maybe 140 games and losing 22 games. And that's going to be tough, because this is what's eventually going to lead to a salary cap. Is the only way the players will agree to a salary cap is to be guaranteed to play less games. So they get sort of more bang for their buck, or per game value, if you want to talk about it that way. And in return, there'll be a salary cap to a certain degree. So it'll be interesting to see if 162 games actually happens in the future. Another question I had was, what are the Cincinnati Reds and the Cubbies doing? And that's actually going to be one of my vlogs coming up next week. But somebody said, are they in rebuild mode? And I know we talked about the Cubs, but the Cincinnati Reds are a little bit of a unique situation. And I think the Reds are actually being really smart about this. One thing that always frustrated me about the Blue Jays was we didn't trade Donaldson away that last season he was with the Jays, that frustrated season, because I really believe we could have got a lot of value out of him. And I really believe the only reason why Donaldson stuck around was to make the fans happy, which is, I get it to a certain degree, but if you're a diehard Jays fan, you understand the importance of rebuilding and investing in prospects, and you're always going to be there. But the Cincinnati Reds are a lot like the Jays in that situation. With Trevor Bauer leaving and they just not sure if they're going to have that synergy. They're going to have that team that's going to get them deep into the postseason this season. So what they're going to do is they're going to sell high on some of their trade chips and really do kind of a soft rebuild, kind of what I thought Boston was attempting to do. And I mean, they're going to look for talent around AA, AAA for Sonny Gray, for Luis Castillo. When you see those guys get moved out, you're going to see Cincinnati go through that soft rebuild. But 2-3 years, they're going to be another impact team in their division. So it's not going to be a 4 or 5 year turnaround for Cincinnati. It's going to be quite quick. Where the Cubs are going to be hamstringed because they have to tiptoe around Yu Darvish's no trade contract with some of these albatross of contracts and players just not playing up to par to what their value is. I mean, even look at Yu Darvish to Sonny Gray. There's some comparisons there. And Sonny Gray, even with his extra year, is only going to make $34 million, where you have to pay close to $60 for Yu Darvish. So the Reds have a lot of great trade chips. No news on Kim yet. And I think Kim and Sagano are going to come right off the board quick. Not to give a preview away, but that's actually going to be, I think, one of my next free agent predictions is definitely Sagano. And the only reason is I think Sagano's window ends on January 7th. I'm not too sure about Kim, but it's very close to that time. So they have to make that decision. And it's just a matter of, are they being respectful over this holiday season and just waiting? But one thing about Asian players is usually they don't mind signing over the holiday season, and this deals usually get done this week. So I'm knocking on wood that you're going to see one of those two players, if not both of them, come off the board before New Year's Day. I think Sagano, it's coming down to whether or not one of the other teams out there, like, I don't think it's the Rangers because they just went out and did that signing from the player from Japan. But I think players like, or teams like the Blue Jays, the Mets, or even the Yankees, they have to make that decision now. It's sort of get off the pot, as they might say. And I think another team, maybe like the Giants, could come in and swoop up somebody like Sagano. Kim's a little bit interesting. He might wait just a little bit longer because there's a lot of upside to Kim. As I said, I see him like a young version, possibly like DJ LeMahieu. I'm not saying he's going to put up numbers, around 350. DJ just has that consistency and that track record. But Kim is awesome. He plays the entire infield. I know his average is over 300 overseas, but they actually expect him to have an average of 270 to 280. 20 to 25 home runs, 20 stolen bases, a 4.0 average WAR. I want this guy for the Jays, and that's really where I see him landing. It's just a matter of whether or not the Jays can just get that signing done. One thing that's notorious about the Blue Jays is they get a little bit too patient, and then you see players go elsewhere, and I believe that happens time and time again. And it's funny, the one time where the Blue Jays were impatient, we went out and signed Kendry Morales. So scratch your head on that one, right? But that's where I see and hopefully see Kim signing with the Jays, probably around $40 million. And then it's going to be really interesting because it's going to be a guessing game on who plays third, who plays shortstop, who's on second. Really, it's going to be anybody's game. And that's really where I see the Jays going next season. And somebody asked me that is, who do I see playing for the Jays next season if I had my wish list or realistically? And I think if we're getting Real Muto, which somebody just commented on, and I'm 90% sure we're going to be getting Real Muto because there's just not a lot of other teams that are going to be able to afford him. Even the Washington Nationals just went out and made that trade with Pittsburgh for Josh Bell, and they're getting a player who's going to be making under $10 million. So if they wanted to step up, there's other players that they could have made a free agent signing for and didn't have to give away those prospects. So, and the Phillies have apparently made an offer to JT, but I really think that's just about face, just to say, hey, we made him an offer. So I see JT Realmuto coming to the Jays. I see the Jays maybe doing a bit of an overpay, exceeding that $23 million a year. That's one thing JT Realmuto wants, is to exceed Joe Mauer's $23 million annual value. So if the Jays give him 24 over 5, that's $120 million. I think that gets the deal done on JT Realmuto. So, and I think that then leads to the Jays trading maybe Alejandro Kirk and Jano, not saying both, but definitely Kirk or Jano to Pittsburgh, and getting Joe Musgrove, who will be our number 4 pitcher. And what's going to happen with Rourke or Grichuk? Well, with Randall, I think he's going to be our DH next year. I don't know what's going to go on with Tanner Rourke, if he's going to be our number 5 or just some expensive guy who's in the minors who probably clears waivers. I'm not too sure there with Tanner Rourke. And to be realistic, the only way Tanner Rourke is going in any deal is if somebody else gets tagged with him. So if you see Tanner Rourke go, you're seeing somebody like Lourdes go, you're seeing somebody like Teoscar go, maybe even somebody like Jordan Groshans. I'm not suggesting who or what player just yet, but that's the only way you're getting Tanner Rourke out of here. And the Jays are probably going to have to absorb even some of that salary and sending him out. So it's got to be for a pitcher. So, and I think people are looking at Grichuk. I think he had a -8 on the defensive WAR last year. Somebody asked if Grichuk is a better fielder than Teoscar. I see Teoscar being a corner fielder next year. And I see the Jays actually maybe making a splash on Jackie Bradley Jr. I think you're going to be able to get him maybe for a 2-year 12, maybe 2-year 14, $15 million deal tops. Jackie Bradley Jr. is probably going to have a softer bat than Randall Grichuk. Randall's actually playing for value now, surprisingly, because when they signed him to that contract, I was like, oh, I'm not too sure. But I could see Jackie Bradley Jr. taking over center field. He's a specialist, kind of like Superman, Kevin Pillar. I mean, nobody's like Kevin Pillar, don't get me wrong. I love Kevin Pillar. But Jackie Bradley Jr. would be a huge upgrade in center field. Then you could have Lourdes and Teoscar handling the corners, and then you could have Randall as a DH. And the nice thing about Randall is if you do need to have Jackie Bradley Jr. have a day off, or even one of the outfielders in the corners, Randall could take on and absorb that. Additionally, if we don't get Jackie Bradley Jr., I think the wild card for center field for the Blue Jays could be Kevin Biggio. He actually plays center field. He can play center field better than Randall Grichuk. So I don't want to see him in center field. I think Kevin Biggio is actually meant to be an infielder. That's where I've always envisioned him. But that could be it. But the nice thing about Jackie Bradley Jr. in center field for the Jays for 2 years is we can start to discuss Austin Martin, that surprise draft signing that the Jays got this year. And Austin Martin's going to be pegged to go in at AA, so he could be up as early as 2 years, and he's probably going to play center field. I know he's played the infield over at Vanderbilt where he was playing in post-college, but MLB analysts and experts expect him to be an outfielder, expect him to be a center fielder who will eventually shift to the corners, kind of like George Springer, but with a lot more upside. So by having Jackie Bradley Jr. in center field for 2 years as a holding spot for Austin Martin, I think really works out well. Maybe we do trade Lourdes away, and there's a corner there that we have to fill, and we'll have to figure that out. But that's how I see the Jays going next year. I see Vladdy at first. I think that's going to be a struggle with the Blue Jays and Vladdy moving forward, so it'll be interesting to see how that moves forward. But I do see Vladdy at first. I just think they're going to push him to get really comfortable there. And Vladdy's just going to have to like it. They will give him some opportunities at third. But I've always looked at Vladdy. I don't know if it's his body. I mean, he slimmed down, so he's on some sort of great off-season regimen. But I do see him as a first baseman. Then you had Kevin Biggio at second. Maybe they appease Bo Bichette and leave him at short. I know he's not the best shortstop, but he's not horrible. And maybe give him another year to grow at that position. And then you could sign Ha-Sung Kim and put him over at third base and use him as an assurance chip. And what I mean by that is if Ha-Sung Kim is there but can play shortstop really well, well, then you can swap him and Bichette throughout the season if there is some significant performance issues there with Bo Bichette. But I do see Vladdy as a first base. So, and then you could have JT Realmuto behind the plate, Randall as a DH. As I said, probably Teoscar. I see Lourdes maybe getting traded for a big name, but Teoscar in the corner, Jackie Bradley in center, and then we'll figure out the other corner outfield spot as we go. And that's really exciting for the Jays because what I do envision for their starting rotation is I don't think they're going to actually go out and make another big signing in the rotation. I think they're going to be hesitant on Sagano, and he's going to go elsewhere. And I think the Jays are going to use somebody like Lourdes or even Simeon Woods, or it has to be somebody really good for Jordan Groshans and really make that trade. Maybe somebody like Yu Darvish, probably not Snell out of Tampa Bay just because it's in the division. Maybe even Luis Castillo or Sonny Gray, but somebody who could be a definite impact starter to go behind Ryu. And then on top of that, you're going to have Joe Musgrove, who I'm sure they'll make the trade for after they sign JT Realmuto. Then I guess it's Tanner Roark, Robbie Ray fighting it out, and naturally a spot for Nate Pearson. And Nate Pearson's a little bit of a wild card because if you look at Nate Pearson, he had a bit of a tough time adjusting to MLB, but that's just because he's young. And if anybody says, oh, well, he struggled at his first start up in MLB, remember Doc Roy Halladay, my hero, actually got sent down after a disastrous start when he first got called up. Had to restart everything right from scratch. And, well, we know how that turned out, Mr. Hall of Famer, my hero. So there's no harm in that if Nate needs a little bit more time to adjust to the MLB level. In fact, I could see them possibly starting him off at AAA just because he has the options there and using Tanner Roark and Robbie Ray as a 4 or 5 just to make sure he's okay, make sure he's comfortable, and bring him up. There's no question, though, that Nate Pearson's going to be in the Blue Jays rotation for 2021. And there's no question at all that Nate Pearson's going to be very dominant moving forward. I guess my only concern with Nate Pearson, and I almost don't want to say it, is how hard and how fast he pitches and all that strain on somebody's arm. Well, we know what that could lead to. I won't say it, but that's my real only concern with somebody like Nate Pearson. And we also have some exciting players coming up like Alex Manoah and Simeon Woods-Richardson if we don't trade them away, but they're still 2-3 years from coming up, and then they need that year or two to adjust and stretch themselves out. So I don't see them really being impactful right now, but certainly something that the Jays can look forward to in the future, or something that they can use as trading chips. And then what's going on with Randy Tellez? I love Randy. I think everybody loves Randy. He's like our Matt Stairs now, but much better. You got to be a true Blue Jays fan, or maybe a Newfie, and I can say Newfie because I got family out in Atlantic Canada, but you got to know that's who Matt Stairs is. He's just one of those fan favorites who the Jays love. Just a big guy who come up and hit when you needed him to hit sometimes. But that's really what I see Randy Tellez being. He's probably going to be a bench player who we just come up and is going to, hit for us when we need to. I see him on the bench, probably maybe even with Jano. If we don't trade Jano away to Pittsburgh and it's Alejandro Kirk who goes. And if it's not Jano, then we'll have Kirk behind him as the second starter. And then you're looking at 2 more people that they can fill that out. And that could just be multidisciplinary players who they just pick up, or maybe somebody who they already have who can add some depth to the infield. You're looking at, players, I don't want to say like him, but players who can play multiple positions. You're looking at like a Joe Panic type of deal. What's going to happen to Fisher? He'll probably end up fishing. No. He was going to get, I'm just thinking of that hit on the head. Jeez, what a lousy way. I hope he gets another chance to bat, or at least a chance to play on the MLB level, because what a lousy way to end your Major League Baseball career than missing a pop fly and getting hit in the head. I think he'll end up signing with a team like Baltimore Orioles or Boston Red Sox, just one of those rebuilding teams that's just looking to add, players on their teams, kind of what the Jays were a couple years ago. And they'll just take a roll of the dice on Fisher. He's probably going to maybe even have to sign one of those types of contracts that could be minor league with a chance to get up and play. It'll be really interesting. Somebody asked me about another Blue Jays player too, and then we'll wrap up because I know we've been going on for a while. And that's what's going on with Aaron Sanchez. And Aaron Sanchez is going to be, I heard he threw for like 18 to 20 teams. I heard he threw like a month ago. And then there was just like crickets, nothing. And I don't know if that's just because it's, went into the holidays or he's just not a premier free agent. I'm not sure about that. But one thing that I do like about Aaron Sanchez is, and I always remember that darn no-hitter him and Biagini put together after we traded him over to Houston, was he had a lot of upside as a bullpen arm. And I would love to see some team take a chance on Aaron Sanchez, see if his shoulders held up, see if he can get over those blister issues and really be a dominant, I don't want to say closer, but definitely somebody in the bullpen who really puts himself and reimagines or reconstructs himself into an awesome MLB player again. So if there's somebody who I have my fingers crossed for, it's definitely Aaron Sanchez. Somebody asked, is Fisher a free agent? I actually don't think the Jays have made a decision on him yet. That's a good question. I have the suspicion if he's not a free agent, it's just a matter of the Jays not including him on his roster, and he will be. I didn't hear anything about the Jays picking up his option. I'm not sure if he's in the arbitration stage right now and they're going to decline that, but they would have declined it already. That's a good question. I'm going to find out, and then on our next chat on January 9th, I'm going to have an answer about what's going on with Fisher. Other than him fishing and maybe looking for employment. My last thing I'll say before we're closed is I'm really excited about 2021, and people said, how do you think the Blue Jays are going to perform? And do you think they're going to make the playoffs? Well, I actually do. And they said, well, do you think you're going to make the playoffs if it's a 5-team playoff structure, you know, your top 3 and your 2 wild card? And I actually do. I think what's going to happen for the Blue Jays next season is something really remarkable. And I think you're going to see the Yankees show a bit of their age and a little bit of what happens when you sign huge players to massive contracts for multiple years and they eat up all of your budget space. Cole's going to be an awesome starter for the Yankees. God forbid he ever gets hurt. But the Yankees really don't have a lot of options behind him. And I think their lack of starting pitching and their lack of depth and their inability to address that right away is really going to be their Achilles heel. And I think this is an awesome time for the Blue Jays to actually take the American League East. And I think they could take it as early as next year. On top of that, I think Tampa's going to trade away Blake Snell. They already declined Charlie Martin. They feel like they're going into a soft rebuild mode, kind of like what the Cincinnati Reds are doing. Boston Red Sox they're in rebuild mode. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know if Boston knows what they're doing out there. And Baltimore is in definitely rebuild mode. So there's an advantage there for the Blue Jays to take the American League East, no matter how the playoff structure is done. It's going to be a battle. The Yankees are always going to be tough. They just have a lot of talent in that lineup, especially if they re-sign DJ LeMahieu. But it's definitely the Jays for the taking if they can get another starting pitcher and really make the lineup dynamic by signing JT Realmuto. Additionally to that, I really see some strengths coming. I think Ruiz is going to have another consistent year. That's just who he is. I think the Jays are going to do another signing for an awesome starter who's going to be decent, maybe not all-star, but give you that consistency you need. And I think you're going to see something really special out of Joe Musgrove if we get that signing done. And that's going to lead to an extension and some stability in the Jays rotation moving forward. I think Nate Pearson is going to kind of have a year like Vladdy did this year, where he's just not as great as everybody had hoped, but certainly solid, and he'll certainly grow into his position. And I think the breakout player of the year for next year is going to be Vladdy. I think he's finally going to show that power. He's got that determination, the way he slimmed down his offseason regiment this year. And if Vladdy's swinging that bat hard and Bo's swinging that bat hard, it's going to be a huge lineup. Actually, very scary and comparable to the Yankees. Just younger, and they just need that time to grow. But imagine this. Imagine if you had Kevin Biggio leading off, followed by JT Realmuto, Bo Bichette, Teoscar, Vladdy as your top 5. And then filling it out with Randall, Jackie Bradley Jr., and others. That's pretty scary. And that's going to get the Jays into the postseason. I don't say they're going to win the World Series, but anytime you get young players into the postseason, it's an awesome time to learn. It's kind of what the Raptors did, and look how exceptional they were. And then maybe in 2022, we go out and maybe make a signing or a trade for that huge, solid ace. Somebody like our Kwame Leonard, who's just going to get the deal done and take us over the top. Thanks for listening to me ramble today. I really appreciate everybody coming on board. As I said, our first Sunday live stream is going to be January 9th. I believe it is. Sorry, January 10th. January 10th, we'll do a live stream every other Sunday at 1:30 p.m. And then as the Jays season starts, the nice thing about it is there'll be a live Jays game going on. So we'll be able to talk about what's going on with the game and just catch up on the weekend baseball. Everybody stay safe, Have an awesome new year. Hit subscribe if you're not a subscriber. We're a small channel, so your support and hitting subscribe is huge for us. And everybody stay safe. We'll talk soon. Bye, guys.